So thank you for joining this session today. As you know, Aspect have supported the whole series again. This is series 4, and you can register your attendance to earn some micro credentials. But Robin, I'm going to come to you just to tell everybody a little bit more about this series and what we've done historically and why this is an important continuation of a conversation.
Yes, certainly. Hi, everybody. So I'm Robin from the University of Bristol, and I guess, like Lucy said, very grateful to Aspect for continuing to enable these series. And they've always been about trying to support projects that are coming out of research that are trying to find their way in the world and have impact. Some of which go on to have commercialization. And I think this one super excited for this session today because so many of our projects end up having new ways of working, new guidelines, training, facilitation, and other methods. And when we can show that there is a need for those things, finding ways to scale those are become where it's really interesting. So integrating with novel technologies is one of the, I think, really exciting routes for kind of finding that next level of innovation. So looking forward to hearing from these speakers. Thanks.
Well, this is it. I was saying before we got started, this is one of these sessions which I'm really intrigued about these technologies, but I have to admit I feel pretty ignorant. So we're going to be rummaging around in Jack, Amy, and Paul's brains in this session. It's a little bit different. It's going to be more of a panel discussion, starting off with Jack. But before we get into the conversation, I want to tell you what some of you have already experienced. We've had the AI tools, project communication and planning, feedback to insight, video storytelling, and AI for creativity. If you missed any of those sessions, they're all on our YouTube channel. We had a very random tech fail with the feedback to insight, where it's just recorded the front page of the program. But so April is it's got you've got the transcript, so we're going to be writing that one up, and April will be back for the next series to be rerunning that one because it was such a good session. But yeah, I've never done that before. We managed to record the wrong slide, but that's all good. That's what's coming up. So today, immersive technologies, how to use VR, AR, XR. What do they even mean? Jack, thank you for joining us today.
Hi,
Tell everybody
no
who you
problem.
are and what you do.
Sure, I'm Jack. I'm the founder and director of Zuba, which is a specialist AR and VR development company.
And why are these the technologies you focused on from a personal perspective? Is this something, do you have a technology background? Is this just a passion that's become a business?
Well, maybe a little bit, yeah. So I was in TV VFX originally, sort of 15 years ago or so. So I worked on a lot of visual effects, compositing sort of stuff for a lot of TV shows and films. And then gradually that sort of evolved into interactive media. I've always been a big fan of video games and yeah, sort of tech stuff. So it was only a matter of time before I found a way of combining them all together into a new kind of career trajectory, really. And now Zuba's been running for 10 years, so we're well established.
And how have you seen the technology evolve over that period? Is it, yeah, I was going to say this is how
Mm.
when you when you started up VR, AR, what did that look like? You think about Pokemon Go. I think it was probably the first
Yeah.
kind of perspective I
Mm.
had of it, which I know is a very high profile project. But that was the first time I saw it kind of on the high street.
Yeah, so when we started, it was really when sort of smartphones were just becoming capable as sort of devices that could actually run AR and VR. So it was sort of on a tipping point of mass market appeal, really. So AR wasn't really that possible when we started in 2015. And VR was just about to sort of have a big launch with the first Oculus, whatever the first one was, just the first Oculus headset, which obviously became really popular in the sort of gaming communities, but less so in a sort of mass market way. But there has been, multiple kind of changes over the years. Probably the main one being, in a way, what I just said, that we've never seen like truly mass market adoption of the kit beyond sort of gaming applications. When it comes to AR, it's much more casual interactions on smartphones. But again, we haven't seen like a huge adaptation like we might have done in the last couple of years with AI, for example. So immersive tech has had to sort of find its place as a more niche activity, which is fine for us. We've kind of catered more to specific business and research applications. So we don't do anything that targets sort of the general public as such.
Who were your first customers back when the technology was still very emerging?
The first few years, it's definitely agencies, creative agencies. They always like to be kind of on the cutting edge of showing cool tech at big conferences, that sort of
Mm.
thing. So they're trying to, they're looking to impress their clients, big corporate clients, with cool tech. Last couple of years, of course, they have mostly ditched us and they want to do cool AI stuff. So it's understandable, but that's fine for us. We've kind of moved more into much more serious training, research, visioning applications, and less gimmicky stuff.
And is that also the evolution of people's understanding of the technologies? It did get bumped into that gaming play bucket, but actually, as people have used it, they've realized it is applicable to education. How have those kind of client conversations started from? Did you almost have to explain the tech to people at the beginning? So now people going, well, I've had an experience, therefore I want to apply it.
Yeah, in a way, it's sort of we're very technology agnostic, so we don't push any particular approach on our clients. I think a lot of people who are sort of passionate about VR will tend to push VR as the solution to everything. So we're actually we prefer AR for a lot more applications. To be honest, it's much more versatile and lower kind of accessibility barrier. A lot of people don't like putting the big clunky VR headset on in a dark room. It's a bit sort of intimidating. So yeah, we have to sort of, we've got really good at just listening to what they want to achieve, what the outcome is that they're looking for, and then we can suggest what technologies, what approaches would work for them.
And what obviously things like Google Glass, which were very lauded a few years ago, then didn't they kind of whimpered away, but then now it's coming back, isn't it? It's the idea of being able to see multiple layers through your glasses.
Yeah, well, there's a few of these kind of trends come along every now and again that are mostly very heavily pushed by Silicon Valley. The tech bros, the big corporate kind of tech companies. They want these things to become a reality, and that their money and their efforts will only go so far. Then they have to float it with the general public and see if it actually flies or not.
Yeah.
So it turns out Google Glass didn't. That was best part of 10 years ago, I think.
I think the tech was it was I think it was a bit clunky. I don't think the user experience was very good.
Hmm. Yeah, I really don't know. It's really hard to sort of have any idea of how sort of Joe Public is going to react to this kind of stuff. They'll they always say, Christmas is a great time to try VR. The Oculus Quest you can get now for 300 quid. It's amazing what you can do with that headset. Even then, the vast majority of them get played around for a bit over the Christmas holidays, and then they're still gathering dust by February on a shelf. Or people say, 300 quid wasn't really worth it for that. And I just think that's crazy to me. The value you can get out of that £300 is really amazing what you could do with that. But maybe it's just not ready yet for mass market.
Yeah, do you think that's a technology capability education gap, as you say? Because I think a lot of people do just put them in that gaming fun. So that is quite a big investment box. But yeah, Ray-Ban is doing work now, isn't it? Is that with Google again? So trying to bring back that flavor.
I think they're with Meta.
Oh
I
yeah,
think that's Meta.
yeah,
They've kind of released their first sort of AI-enabled smart glasses. They've started calling them smart glasses instead of AR because you don't get a truly augmented view. You just get a layer of information over your view, which it does open all sorts of problematic questions around privacy and data
Mm.
protection as well. Just in, who really wants to invite Meta to just see every room inside their house and what products they're buying, stuff like that.
And so when somebody comes to you and wants to scope a project, how has that conversation evolved over the years, and what do people know, don't know? How much? Because it feels to me like this feels,
Mm.
I it's almost a could I? How would I apply this technology to my project? Do you end up doing quite a lot of creative scoping over, as you say, the technical? It's like it's more what. Yeah, talk me through. So, depending on, I'm a customer. I'm coming to see you. Talk me through what we'd have to work through to get a project going.
Well, I guess my first question is going to be what outcome do you want? What are you trying to achieve? I wouldn't necessarily immediately recommend my technologies to you. I want to understand what you're looking to get out of it first, because I'll be perfectly happy to recommend you to a completely different service if I didn't think you were the right match for us. So, really, when it comes to immersive tech and what we specialize in, quite a lot of the time it comes down to a few really simple things. Depending on what your research is, of course, it might be visualizing something in the past, so historical reconstructions of things. It might be visualizing something in the future, future visioning, climate change, the sort of urban developments, what those sort of things could look like, or something that is otherwise impossible, like being shrunk down to atom size and going into the human body, or seeing things that are not usually visible, X-ray vision through walls, that sort of thing. So it really comes down to achieving things that aren't normally possible, achieving the impossible through AR and VR, essentially.
Do you need someone to really? I mean, this is a theme that's gone through the workshops. You'll be unsurprised to hear, like starting with the
Mm,
why and the who and the story and
yeah.
that end goal. And we're going to hear from Amy and Paul about how that's evolved from the scoping through to the delivery, because we've got two people who've actually sort of run these projects. But so you're
Mm.
walking through somebody, and then as you say, advise them on whether this is something that should be using sort of augmented reality, or rather whether it should be a different piece of technology or something simpler. And I was just gonna ask you to you talk through how you present those technologies on your website, and because this is the other thing, how you position this, because this is a terminology that you want confidence before you come and talk to you. I'd want that confidence of having a little bit of an idea of what I want to say and what I want to achieve. So yeah, and you've obviously had to this your website, I'm sure, has gone through multiple
Mm.
iterations as the technology's changed.
Yeah, so let's have a quick look. Can you see my screen here? This is our website.
Yes.
There we go. So um, let me just quickly show you our home page then, so you have a bit of an idea. We have a little video loop of some of the stuff that we do here with theme parks, for example, historical reconstructions of the American Rev War and the Acropolis in Athens. This is a climate change visioning piece and a historical manor house. So
Wow.
there you go. There's a quick blast of some example projects, and then this specific page here is catering to sort of academic research and some of the projects that we've done. Obviously, we've worked with quite a wide range of different universities to create lots of different visioning projects. So these ones here, for example, a medical piece, which is for training junior medical staff, which uses effectively a kind of AR X-ray layer that lets you see inside training mannequins and
Mm.
see certain procedures being undertaken on the mannequin, or completely different approach is the climate change visualization, which uses a real kind of slice of geographic data to then run simulations in 3D of different flood events that could take place. So this is delivered as part of a climate change training course.
Mm.
So these are just some examples of the sort of projects that we've undertaken in collaboration with academic researchers over the last 5 years or so.
And do you think because it really links in very well to exploring the possible? And that's obviously, there's that academic connection always been a very natural
Yeah.
engagement. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So it might be, yeah, for the future visioning stuff, of course, exploring certain theories in a kind of 3D navigable way, or it could be, yeah, historical reconstructions as well. This is quite a good example. This is a major project that we did with the MOD, the DSTL,
Mm.
who had a a number of research papers they'd had written, and they had to find a way to get more engagement with them. So to sort of effectively make them a bit more entertaining for when they're showing politicians or policymakers at events, and found that they wouldn't really engage with a 200-page PDF. A better approach to capture attention is to create 3D environments and let them explore them at their own pace. This image, for example, was exploring a number of different designs for submersibles, autonomous submersibles. So these are basically sea drones.
Mm.
And you can go and have a look at them up close and play with them and see all the stats about them. But there's also climate change sort of scenarios, and various other concepts that are all explored in 3D.
Is this also more inclusive as from a learning perspective? Because I totally get it. Reading a 200-page document over playing with some submersives, that's how I know what I'd want to
Mm.
do. But I think there's also the way the human brain learns. I don't know if you've done any research or we're going to speak to Amy and Paul about this as well. But when you've worked with academics or corporates on these projects, how have they measured the impact of the engagement and the experience that you've created for them compared to what they've done historically?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we have, I suppose, quite limited data on that ourselves because that's generally something that our clients take responsibility for, and they don't always feed that back to us. But there is research out there about the sort of increase in engagement rate with this sort of stuff. That's not to say that there aren't, it's not clear cut all the time. I think there are some cases with training in particular where they find that hands-on physical training is often better than trying to use VR to replace all of that, which is
Mm.
understandable. But when it comes to absorbing sort of complex ideas, like in this project, it definitely it comes out ahead of reading white papers pretty much every time. That is, of course, for trying to engage people that are outside of your research circle. That's why I say like politicians, for example, they need to take really digestible chunks of information away with them. So this is really ideal for that kind of thing.
And I know it's good for training in environments where things can't go wrong. I know people have done it for train drivers and submersives, so in
Mm.
submarines, because there are environments where you want to practice going wrong, but if you went wrong in real life, that there's potentially life-threatening consequences. So it's good to be able to work
Yeah.
through a bit like the human body. We can't
Mhm.
these days we can't go around cutting people open and exploring. It's good to understand those
Mm.
layers. It feels like the doctor's tables you see in sci-fi movies, doesn't it? Where you can kind of scan through somebody's body. That's all coming together with this technology.
Yeah,
And
exactly. Yeah.
I mean the this I know this is going to be how long is a piece of string this question, but budget. We talked about
Mm.
videos that it's about £1,000 a minute for a video, 2,000 if you want animation. AI is definitely disrupting that sector. For
Mm.
pricing, what sort of, I mean, this is difficult because I know they've got to really scope the project, but is it expensive to do this?
It can be, yeah. I mean, obviously, a piece like this one for the MOD was a multi-year project that was, upwards of 100K effectively, really just for kind of building the 3D environment, let alone functional elements and project management stuff.
Yeah.
But there are more. much more budget-friendly approaches, depending on what the scope of the work is, of course. But one like this, for example, is basically the core of the work for us is the 3D reconstruction. So making a building. This was several years ago, this one, but this is a church in Florence that doesn't exist anymore. And we made an AR app that lets you kind of revisit it as if it's still there. So in a way, the kind of ambitions of the project, the value that you get from it is so much bigger than the cost of just modeling one building, if that makes
Mm,
sense.
mm.
We're modeling one church, but what you get out of it is an app that works in the National Gallery in London, it works in the street in Florence, and it works anywhere else. You get to sort of bring a whole building back to life, and that sort of thing is possible for probably under 10 grand. We've been able to make things much more cost effective recently. We are also using AI tools ourselves now.
Yeah.
Probably wouldn't surprise you to hear, to speed up the modeling process and the texturing and stuff like that. So it's much more cost effective now for us to be able to make these kind of environments.
And what's also interesting, what you alluded to with all the projects, is you're a piece of the picture, you're a piece of the conversation, a piece of the whether it's the education or the engagement,
Mhm.
and so your cost fits in with the scale of the project and the outputs and the budgets of the wider project. So like with the MOD, as you said, I know the influence that was having, and some of the more the lighter touch ones will be a part of, I imagine, the Italian that city's wider tourism project. You know, you're a really rich part of the conversation, as a website would be, as maybe a video would be, as content would be. I forgot to say to the audience, if you have questions, please do put them in the chat. So I'm keeping an eye on that as well as we talk. But yeah, it's kind of looking at the pieces and the best ways to communicate most effectively, and you are part of that.
Yeah, we're always really happy to collaborate with researchers. We've got an in-house researcher who can obviously help with making sure that things are accurate and being presented as they should be. But of course, the more accurate information we can be given from the start, the quicker and easier the whole process will be.
Well, I noticed that all your projects have multiple logos on them. It shows that collaboration is at the core of all, yeah, at the core of all of these
Yeah.
discussions. You're not standing alone, just making, a great piece of content. It's all those people, those stakeholders. How do you find that managing that and all those conversations and what good looks like across multiple goals and visions?
Yeah, it's really good. I think, some projects are obviously more complicated than others, but over the years we've really honed a process of making sure that the hierarchies are clear, and that we don't have everyone just reporting to us in one giant email chain. That there are lines, and we will use spreadsheets or whatever to make sure that the information is flowing in the right direction, basically. Um, but yeah, it's normally very good.
And you mentioned about AI and its role going forward.
Mm.
How are you finding that your relationship with AI? Is it a great supporter to your business? Is it a distraction? Do you feel under threat by it in any way? What's your relationship?
It's pretty good. I don't think we're feeling too under threat. Like I mentioned earlier, there is an element of our kind of creative agency audience who have largely turned their backs on us because they're chasing a new shiny thing. For example, wanting like a sort of 3D chatbot at a conference that you can ask questions to, that sort of thing. But that's fine. I don't think we ever would have really seen the value in that anyway. So more with as a whole team, everyone in my team has learned to pick up a few AI tools to speed up their process and become more productive in a way that just plugs in with what we already do. And there's no like huge transformation, really. It's just making better 3D models faster or making textures more realistic or making concept art quicker and more believable, that sort of thing.
To be fair, that feels like I think most of our relationship with AI it's is
Mhm.
enhancing, it's not replacing, and all the work you're doing with the scoping and the understanding, AI is not capable of having any of those conversations right
Yeah, I
now. It's
think,
that blend.
yeah, we obviously have to be careful, all of us, I think, with AI because um, we see a lot of people sort of going a bit too gung ho with it online. Some of our competitors' websites, for example, they've started just using really blatantly AI generated imagery. And that's not something that you'll see on our website. Everything is still handcrafted. So there's nothing AI generated here. There might be some tools that have been used to create certain things, but we'd never just slap AI stuff on the website.
And I would say for those in the audience who are thinking about how they could apply technology, the AR, VR to their projects, starting a website is a great place to go for inspiration. And that's why we've got Amy and Paul here. It's like it can feel a bit overwhelming of what could it do. Go and look at what
Mhm.
it has done, and then come to you and say, look, this looks like a really good application, and start the conversation that way. I think it's almost like building a website. If you go to somebody and say, I need a website, where do you start? If you go and say, I really like this website, I think this has a lot of the right attributes that I want. How can we apply this to my project? It's already a better conversation for you because you know what good could look like. So
Mm.
do apply the same with this technology, and I think you'll have a much richer experience and project going forward and make your life easier. So thank you, Jack, for that bit of background. Because I think the technology for me is the bit that I find a little daunting. In a positive way, I love it. I like it as a user, but to apply it for a project, I find a bit daunting. So I wanted to start with the background as to your experience, and then come and talk to two people who've gone through this with you, had those conversations, and whose projects are both in their first or second years that they've evolved through. Amy, welcome.
Hi,
Do you want to tell everybody who you are, what you do?
I'm Amy Frost. I'm the senior curator at Bath Preservation Trust. So we have four museums in Bath. We're an independent charity.
And Jack and Paul, do feel free to ask Amy questions. Obviously, I think Paul, this is your first time hearing about the project, because Jack, you know it very well. You've been enjoying its evolution. Now, Amy, do you have a few slides just to talk us through the
Yeah,
project?
just to sort of set it up really in terms of um,
Give
what
everyone a bit of context, and we can get
what
into the
we've
nitty gritty.
done.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is primarily a project at one of our museums, Beckford Tower, which was successfully kind of delivered what we like to think of as an infrastructure project, really, that was National Lottery Heritage Fund supported. It was just under £4 million project, which was conservation of the building, complete representation of the museum, and new interpretation throughout the landscape. And we knew that we wanted a digital component, and actually everyone should be aware that particularly within the heritage world, the single biggest funder is the National Lottery Heritage Fund, and they expect quite a substantial digital component. But we also knew that we want digital to enhance the museum experience and enhance the collection rather than in any way kind of replace the experience. Um, but you can see the tower on screen. So what we were also dealing with was a 120-foot high tower. So there are immediately barriers to access. There are physical barriers to access. There's a pay barrier even, so because of paying to come into the museum. So we wanted to try and break down as many of those barriers as possible, and that's where digital becomes really, really vital, and really a way of exploring quite exciting ways of creating different forms of access to people. And we quite often talk about a digital visitor. So there is the physical visitor that will engage with digital on site, and then there's also the digital visitor that may just be engaging with our website or whatever content is on the website. So it's become a really kind of key part of kind of museum audiences. And when we approached our kind of digital part of this project, which Zuba kind of responded to the tender, and we really wanted to go with. We were really excited with the opportunity of using AR for this building in particular. And we had sort of certain strands for that. We had an outdoor app for people exploring the landscape that was a free to access app. And then we had the moments, what we sort of thought of as our digital moments within inside the museum. And the key to this is that we were very upfront about at the beginning was I mean, we talk about, Lucy, you were sort of mentioning about kind of getting your head around the technology. I mean, I'm an architectural historian. We are museums people. Our knowledge of technology at that kind of very, very experimental or innovative level is often quite low. But that also makes us the ideal people to be commissioning things because we're very representative of the users in a way. But we also wanted something that was going to be easy for us to use, as in us, the people in the museum, running it and maintaining it. And we said from the very beginning, the last thing we want is something that when it's not working, there is a sign on it saying, out of order, or this interactive is not working. If it's not working, it goes away, it packs away. It's like not there. People don't even know it's there. So that was kind of a core thing for us. And to give people an idea of, so we have this historic building that has none of its original interiors. So this is what, for example, what's now the main museum room, this is what it used to look like. When the building was originally built, and fitted out as a collection. And before the project, this is what the museum looked like. And we'd been playing around with things about, the right wall colours or the right carpets to give it a sense of the feel of what these rooms might have been like originally. But when we approached this project, that's not what we wanted to do. We wanted to actually have modern museum infrastructure with fantastic display cases so we could borrow objects, with all the things that are really a modern museum needed, without us trying to fake the interiors that no longer existed. So this is the new museum fit out. And of course, what that then presented us with was, how do we tell people what it used to be like, or how do we show what it used to
And
be
that's
like?
so much fresher. That kind of dark, its
Completely
energy was
different.
all wrong, wasn't it?
Yeah, completely different. And what I
Lovely.
should say is it's a museum that deals with some quite heavy and problematic subjects. So William Beckford, who built this building, was intensely complicit in the transatlantic slave trade. It is a space that holds quite challenging stories and quite emotionally triggering stories. So we wanted to make the space accessible in lots of different ways, and we did a huge amount of public consultation around this, but also around the digital. And that consultation also was a lot of testing. So Zuba were coming up with first versions, and we were testing it with our community engagement and our community advisory teams, which was really, really vital. So here we have like the modern space, and we basically put a pink strip on the floor to show where the division between the rooms were. So sometimes interpretation can be so basic in terms of you're standing on this side of the wall and you're standing on that side of the wall.
Mm.
And then we had QR codes on the floor to trigger the AR reconstructions of the rooms. So the room, as you engaged with the process, the visitor sees the room constructed around them. And then as they move around the space, there are information points that they can kind of zoom in on to find out more information about that original piece of furniture or the original thing within the room. And so we have three of these in what's a very small museum. This is a really, really small museum space. It's only 2 rooms. So we have three of the AR room reconstructions, which have been really, really popular with our visitors. They're really easy for our staff and volunteers to explain or to show. We don't expect people to use their own devices, so we have devices we can lend out if people don't want to use their own phones. And it was a really, really great way for us of being able to kind of step inside the historic space. Our learning from it has been like it's been really successful. What we've also learned, like, and when you do the what would you do differently? I mean, what we would do differently is actually probably try and find a little bit more money so that we could have done them. And Jack and I had these conversations about actually if it we were using images, historic images, to kind of animate it. Actually, if we'd had more money, we would have done a full kind of modeling, so that there could be even more interaction within the space. So like you could go up to a cupboard and open a door and that sort of thing. And that's something that, we've learned from in terms of what budget we ask for when we're applying for grants, but also kind of what is possible and what our kind of next steps might be. And
I
the
think
other
it's also
thing
quite good
that,
to do it gradually because, as you said, you had to make some assumptions about user experiences and journeys.
yeah,
I think that's also another maybe a point for here is staging it if budget allows. And
yeah,
Jack, you're nodding as well, but I also like how collaborative this conversation has been. It's very much not here's some tech, go and play with
and
it.
here's
It's
the
that fight,
answer.
it's that working together.
Yeah.
Which is, Jack, I guess, also means that's why the projects get longer, is because it is a conversation because you are basing on experience. This is what good will look like for V1. And then it should evolve with user journey. If we make too many assumptions, we could go the wrong way.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I think far better to sort of launch with a basic low budget option and see how your audience react to it and adapt it later, improve it later than to launch with a hugely ambitious but untested concept from day one that doesn't work well because we've seen people do that time and time again. Quite often, local councils actually, unfortunately, with a lot of their sort of high street recovery funds over the last few years, they go, yeah, 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 we want an app. Let's have an app. Great. Oh, it's like 200 grand. Yeah, we'll spend the 200 grand on an app. And it doesn't work. It doesn't, they'll have like maybe 20 downloads and then they
Yeah,
have to
people just
quietly
don't use them.
You've got
shelve
to
it.
keep it simple. One of the funniest things in Swindon was they printed out some big posters with a QR code where you had an AR, basically you'd scan it and you'd get a satellite would pop up in front of you. It was all about space technology. So they
Mm,
kept it really simple, very
yeah.
low. It's all about that friction, isn't it? If it's difficult for the customer in any way, like Amy, you said about you supplied the technology. If you make it awkward, people won't do it. Even Jack, like you said, putting headsets on,
Mm.
you put barriers in place, you end up
Yeah.
not having the conversation at all.
And people, are learning. So we've got a fantastic app that we built with Zuba and Calvium. No one's using it outside. And what we're also finding is that a lot of people are coming to museums to get away from digital. So
I've heard the
it's
National Trust
also,
has said that quite a lot
yeah.
of we don't want technology. We see us as being a tablet free zone.
Yeah, and we're getting that. That's not like coming from us, that's actually coming from our visitors. So a lot of our
Mm.
visitors are sort of saying, particularly families, that they want people to put down their phones and enjoy while they're there. So that's
Mm.
also that reinforcing of the digital is there and available, but it's not fundamental to the
It's not leading the
experience. And
narrative.
that thing of doing
Yeah.
it in stages is sort of the next aspect of it that Zuba did. So we have objects on loan, and then there are a lot of objects that for whatever reason we would never be able to borrow in our collection that were originally in the building. And for example, there's sort of on the painting that I've just put up, which is a painting we own, but the object on the far right, which is like a nautilus shell being held by a figure, is in the Waddesdon Manor collection. And we wanted a way of kind of people be able to explore objects that we don't have, but also explore them in more detail than you're ever going to see when they're behind a glass case. And this is where we made Zuba made the photogrammetry moments for us within the museum. So here's the original object at Waddesdon Manor, and the Zuba team kind of doing the recording and the photography needed.
The glamour
Um,
of behind the scenes there, Jack.
I know,
The
a
green
nice bit
screen.
of green screen there. And you can also tell how cold it was when we were there. But and then on the right you can see it where that object kind of appears when you use it on screen using a QR code, and The visitor can turn it round, can zoom in, can zoom out, can see all the kind of intricate detail that you would never
It's beautiful,
see.
isn't it? What a
Yeah,
beautiful
it's a really
thing.
beautiful object, and you would never see it otherwise. So, and we just had a couple of these, but we know that we could have capacity to add more, and that it could grow if we wanted to. So that became a really important way of kind of opening up the objects and collections. And then that idea of physical accessibility was really paramount for us. So we have this 120-foot high building. Even the museum is on the first floor. So even to get into the building, you have to go up a flight of 7 stairs. So physical access was always going to be a real barrier.
Yeah.
But before the project, underneath this grassy mound that you can see, was actually the original entrance to this pre-project, very damp and slightly depressing looking vault that used to sit under the building. And we did a lot of access user consultation, and we spoke to a particular access user group where there were quite a few people with limited mobility. And we said, look, we can build a little building in the landscape where you can go and engage with digital exploration, or we can turn this tiny damp space into an accessible space. And they all wanted the tiny damp space.
You really sold it to them.
Well, I know we were really surprised, but it's because it's physically
It's
part
real.
of the building. They
Yeah,
actually want to
exactly.
be in the same building as everybody else.
Yeah.
So we turned it into a wheelchair accessible
Oh,
space.
wow. Cool.
In which we have the Zuba binoculars, which have the sort of digital access tour of the whole building. So not just the kind of idea of what people are getting in the museum, but you can go up the staircase, you can explore the view from the top of the building. And this has been really, really successful. And really popular. And it's there available to any visitor that goes into this space. This is a free to access space, so you don't have to pay to go in the museum. All visitors use it, but in particular, we've had a lot of really good feedback from wheelchair users, from people who, for whatever reason, couldn't go up the staircase, couldn't go into the museum. And that's probably been like one of the most successful aspects of looking at how this kind of new technology can just open up the stories and open up the building to more people in a way that is quite easy to use, but in a way that doesn't kind of feel like it's a replacement. It feels like it's a bonus. And I think that for kind of inclusive access, that's really, really significant. It's not well, you can't do this, so you're doing that. It's actually you're getting this experience that is actually really different and sort of an enhancement rather than a kind of replacement.
Mm.
And I think that that's sort of been really important to kind of the responses we've been getting from people.
I happen to say, well, I didn't know that was there. I'll be coming up. Not far from me. Thank you, Roger. Last but not least, Paul, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been really interesting to hear about your project also, the Beckford Tower project. It's been great to hear about that project, which actually one of my students who's doing a PhD exploring immersive heritage is using Beckford Tower as one of their case studies, but I haven't got over myself yet to experience.
Paul, do you want
Excellent.
to talk us through your project? Because again, so Amy, how long has the Beckford Tower project been running from?
So we reopened in June last year, so just over a year.
And how long did the planning take that from getting the funding to the?
Well, we got the first bit of funding in 2020, so that was interesting. In February 2020. So that was interesting to try and then do public consultation. But the delivery, the creation and the delivery of the digital was from 23.
Okay, so it took about a year to bring all the
Yeah.
pieces together to wonder, and I think that's quite good because it does feel like it's a project that you need to give space and do the user testing and get the feedback and it also, did you do it in stages or did you open everything at the same time? So the upstairs and downstairs, so that
The
open different
museum
times?
opened all at the same time, but
Okay.
we had built in quite a lot of testing pre-opening. So particularly around the kind of out in the landscape and views from the top of the tower, which Zuba also created a part of the app for. So yeah, we'd built in quite a bit of that before. But the other thing that's really important is we had kept money in our budget for post-opening changes. So we'd ensured that our funding went on longer than the reopening of the building, so that after 3 or 4 months of people using it, we did evaluation and we went back and made some more changes.
Really good to know. Yeah. Cool. Paul, sorry, I was going down another tangent. There's so much to explore. Tell us about your project.
Well, I'm going to share a slide to do that. Let me do that now. So yeah, you should be seeing a slide that says
Yes.
Supervisor Toolkit.
Perfect.
Yeah, so just as an introduction, so I'm Paul Clark, and I'm a professor of performance and creative technologies at University of Bristol, where I also direct the Immersive Arts MA. And it's interesting to hear about Beckford Tower, partly because in the past I've done quite a bit of work on immersive heritage projects. One of those was the Lost Palace, which people might know, which was a visitor experience for historic royal palaces. And we had some similar kind of challenges set for us by historic royal palaces. One was how do you develop a visitor experience, an immersive tour of a palace that no longer exists and burnt down in 1698, which is an interesting challenge. And also to make something that was not screen based, that didn't involve engaging with screens. So yeah, ours was predominantly an immersive audio tour, but that used what we called a historical surveillance device, which was actually a sort of bespoke wooden device through which you interacted with and discovered the content.
I quite like that narrative about bringing in technology without it feel like it's dominating. That
Yeah, this
blend of making the experience richer without looking at a screen. I think that's a really interesting, immersive without it being too tech heavy in a weird way, or too tech obvious, isn't it? That's a real blend.
Yeah. Interestingly, we worked with Calvium on that also, who were one of your partners on the Beckford Tower project. Anyway, I'm not going to talk about that project, even though I've now started to. I'm going to share I'm going to share an AR project that's about futures, rather than pasts. So that has quite an interesting narrative because it came out of an artwork. So it came out of a theatre and technology piece, which was called Millennium, which was not a historical guided tour, but instead was a guided tour of the future of a place, in which you saw augmented reality animations of site-specific science fictions that were overlaid onto your city streets. And we worked with Zuba for the first time on the European tour of that project. And several architects or city councillors who experienced that artwork, the science fiction guided tour, thought that it would have applications in urban planning and engagement. So since then, we've worked on Future Places Toolkit, the aim of which, as it says on the screen, is to do planning consultation differently by using immersive technologies. So to introduce it, I'm going to share. Well, it's just the start really of a pitch which will introduce you to that project. So our aim with Future Places Toolkit is to turn this into this. So yeah, to turn maybe our expectations of local planning meetings, some disgruntled and maybe quite disengaged local residents, into well, hopefully faces like the woman here who is looking a little bit more excited by the magic of augmented reality and the possibilities of shaping the future of her place. So yeah, the aim is really to improve plans and approval outcomes for civil engineers, for architects, council planners, and for communities, helping to get the homes and helping to get the homes and infrastructure areas need built. So for us, the current consultation process is pretty outdated, ineffective, costs everyone involved time and money, and is really crying out to be disrupted. Current engagement methods tend to be unimaginative, dry, surface level, and they don't involve a wide enough range of people.
I don't want to get involved in it. It just feels like a debate I don't want to be in. It's like, going, as you said, it has the wrong energy.
Yeah.
I want to be involved with the conversation, but traditional methods, I feel excluded and I don't want to give that as much time as they demand.
Yeah, so often what you see, as you're seeing on this slide, is boards on the wall of a local hall, away from the place that's actually being
Which are only
redesigned.
open during working hours. So if you want to go, if you have a job, you
Yeah.
probably can't go and have a look.
Yeah, so they can I think make the plans and proposals difficult to understand, and yes, the range of people who will engage with planning consultation in that form is quite limited. Tends perhaps to be older people, certainly pretty unengaging for younger people who will potentially live in and use the
And
space
it doesn't, it,
that are
it has
being
the word
designed.
consultation, but it doesn't feel like a conversation. It feels like you're being told what's happening through some, as you say, some very boring pop-up banners.
Yeah, it can
Where,
certainly also tend to feel like a fait accompli rather than
yeah,
meaningful engagement.
consultation in name only.
Yeah, yeah. So unsurprisingly, they tend to fail to enable constructive feedback or meaningful insights, and unsurprisingly, that tends to create pushback from the public when the designs don't align with their visions, their kind of wants and needs for their neighborhood. And well, the research that we've done shows that the need to resubmit can take months or years for clients and cost up to, or actually even more than £250,000. So not having that community buy-in, it's necessary to do engagement. That's a legal requirement. And yeah, buy-in can be very costly. Not having community buy-in, having pushback from community can be really costly. So yeah, this is the solution, which is an augmented reality solution. It's bespoke software and facilitated service. So software that we've developed with Zuba, that Jack's been closely involved with, and yeah, and also a facilitation method. So it's software facilitated service, and that enables, we hope, those responsible for engagement to overcome those problems that I've just identified. So we're using immersive technologies to create interactive in-person events to engage, inform, and consult with communities around proposed developments. And the idea is that the approach breaks down barriers, brings plans to life in a fun way, involving people who might not otherwise engage with planning. And the aim is to support more meaningful, more constructive discussions, and to provide balanced, honest insights into what people want and need from the development and for their neighbourhood. As I said, it's legal requirement for planning approval to consult, and the aim is that our service de-risks the planning process by reducing the chance of objections and the need to resubmit, making the process less costly, but also leading to plans and development briefs that are more aligned with local wants and needs. So a video of how it works. So yeah, this is a short video of how it works. Here's our illustrator, Jazz, drawing in virtual reality in the studio. And we're hosting a conversation with people being consulted on the street in the very place that a development is planned for. And participants see the proposed plans and ideas they come up with visualized in augmented reality on smartphones. The illustrator who you saw earlier is listening in to what people say and drawing live in 3D, and also dropping in some pre-prepared 3D sketches from a library. And yeah, as I've said, really, engagement rarely happens where a development is taking place. And we think that seeing the plans and drawings in the context that they're intended for makes them easier to understand and communicate to a wider range of stakeholders. And yeah, the approach has been designed, developed, and tested with clients and with communities, and we're currently delivering the solution.
Brilliant.
So just quickly, these are a number of this is a number of contexts where we've been running the AR engagement activity. So with Bristol City Council in Temple Quarter, as part of the Temple Quarter regeneration project in Birmingham, for Birmingham Settlement, engaging people particularly around the new nature and wellbeing centre that they were developing, and plans for that. It's been part of the Levelling Up project on Philwood Broadway in Knowle West, the High Street redevelopment project, and then more recently working with Architecture 00 around the High Street delivery plan for Philwood Broadway, and then also with Stride Triglawn, Bristol-based architects, and Cowshed in Wales, working on another high street project, a public realm project in Caerphilly, working with Caerphilly Council on the Caerphilly 2035 project. Yeah, so I won't go into the impacts, but yeah, just to sort of finish, there's a few testimonies from people that we've worked with, both community organisations, city council, and well, an architect and civil engineer there. Yeah, so that's some very nice testimony from people who yeah have been clients who we've worked with Future Places Toolkit on engagement. And yeah, the aim is now to spin out Future Places Toolkit as a social enterprise, as a social enterprise. So to spin out from University of Bristol and Zuba, so that it becomes its own company. And yeah, that's our vision really, is to engage everyone with shaping the future of their neighbourhoods in this
How have you
with
engaged with
creative
councils
technologies with
so
AR.
far? Yeah, because I've got lots and lots of questions. I'm sure Jack and Amy, I'm sure Robin does too. So have UKRI paid for the pilots? Did you get started with that funding, and our clients now paying for it?
Yeah, so that's I guess how it's worked. His funding has come from a range of different sources. So we've had funding from the AHRC via Impact Acceleration account. That's funding that's focused really around engagement and actually piloting the project initially with Bristol City Council and with communities. And that was really valuable because, as you were also talking about earlier, that's enabled us to do some testing with users and beneficiaries, and to also really understand better the kinds of reporting and visualization and the kinds of questions or scopes that architects or developers or councils have. So to do that sort of market validation, and also to iteratively design the software and the facilitation method, drawing on the feedback that we're receiving through that piloting and testing. But yeah, we've had Impact Acceleration account. We've had some UKRI funding, that's R&D funding through My World and Digital Catapult, that Zuba was successful in applying for, to do more of the technology development. And then more recently, yeah, we've had some Creative Connect funding, which was also from Digital Catapult and My World, some of which came to the university and some to Zuba. So yeah, I would say that, I mean, maybe that's something to say about the nature of these kinds of projects. On one hand, we could be really, we could be positive about it, and we could say that actually it's been developed over quite a few years, and there's been quite a few stages and iterations to that development. On one hand, that's I think enabled us to get the solution right and to adjust that and to tailor it to the kind of wants and needs both of community members and also architects, civil engineers, and councils. On the other hand, the nature of a project like this is it's been funded from a range of different sources, has involved a range of applications to impact funds or to R&D funds, in order to get to the stage that we're at now, where we are able to sell this as a service, and we hope a service that has benefits in terms of solving problems with engagement for councils and architects, but also is a solution that uses augmented reality to make something accessible, that makes plans understandable, engages a wider range of people in, we hope, an entertaining way, and yeah, it sort of does engage people with planning who might not otherwise get involved. Yeah, so the hope is certainly that it's a social venture, and that it's beneficial whilst it's something we can offer commercially, also has benefits for communities and
The ROI
get
felt very
involved.
tangible from your earlier slides around the cost of getting this wrong. Feels like a pain that a lot of councils have.
Yeah, yeah.
How are you? So it sounds like this is a slightly tangent question, but you're doing this as well as teaching. What is your ambition to be working on this going forward, or what would you like this to become?
Well, I mean, Jack should come in here too. I think we're keen for this to become a company, and a company that is self-sustaining. And it's not just me, and it's not just Jack, although we'll continue to have involvement. Really, the aim is that there's already something of a team in place, and the aim really is to grow that team. I
Yeah,
need to
we're
be aware that I've only got so much capacity and Jack's only got so much capacity. So yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to sort of build it out as a sustainable business model that has the kind of flexibility to be picked up by other teams and can be sort of sub-licensed to them potentially, which could really help uh, make it scalable, really. In other countries, for example, other cities around the world, trusted local partners could pick up that business model.
Yeah, that's the thing I maybe didn't talk about is, if we're talking more about the sort of development pathway with it, and sort of future R&D really. At the moment, it's what we're able to offer is a service that we deliver, that our team kind of delivers the facilitation, the software that enables it, and the kind of technical aspects. We're delivering that as an engagement activity, as a service. We can offer that currently, but in terms of kind of scaling that up or scaling that out, we think there's also opportunities in terms of exploring this as a software package that others can use, or a sort of platform aspect to it, so that it becomes more like a supported software as a service. So
I quite like the platform, so people can learn from each other, and other cities can understand what works and how they engage, and notice what to do with the data and how best to approach. Because they say the learning curve you've been on over the last couple of years, you've obviously tried different approaches, different technologies, different designs. You know what people really engage with and what they didn't. So that whole. Is there anybody else doing this though? Has anyone else realised this is a great idea?
I mean, yeah, there's some research projects out there, and there's some other people trying to get some investment for projects that do relate. I think, and then also in terms of competitors, there's people, of course, who are like creative engagement consultants and also architects who are doing engagement in a range of different ways. We think it's fairly novel to be doing immersive engagement of this kind, to be using augmented reality in this way. That I would say the majority of projects that or sort of similar projects we have kind of encountered. tend to be tend to be showing people in augmented reality 3D models, sort of photorealistic models that are architects' plans, rather than the approach that we are taking, which is on one hand a sort of hand-drawn illustration style, the kinds of 3D sculpting, I guess, that our artist is kind of doing live, that feels open to change, and more perhaps immediate, or kind of,
I
or
was
it
going to ask for that. So you
feels less of
chose
a fait
that.
accompli
Yeah,
than
because I was thinking, you're right, an
photorealistic.
architect would want to show you the finished thing. And is that why you chose that style to make it? For me, it has a warmth to it because, as you say, it feels like it has an energy rather than a replication of a piece of concrete, you know.
Yeah, we've had sort of quite circular discussions around this, haven't we, Paul? In terms of
Yeah.
it took a while to sort of come up with that, but I think it's a really good approach to keep it sort of warm and friendly and actually sort of disarming for people to see that stuff can be a bit sort of sketchy and come in as
Well,
you
it feels like
suggest
it's
it.
not finished, which is actually the narrative you want, whereas the architect
Yeah.
looks finished. It feels like they are part of, because I mean, we did it at Bath Digital Festival. You can change that bit. You can rub that bit out and put another thing in.
Yeah, so we have to kind of anticipate that we will get a little bit of pushback from people, especially architects, on that, often will say things like, "Oh, could you just make it feel a bit more structural? You know, how can it look more like my
That's their comfort
design?"
zone. Yeah.
That's what they like, but
Yes.
we have to sort of say, I understand you want that, but this is kind of a compromise between you and the residents. They need to kind of come up with their ideas as well. So this is kind of a halfway house for
Mm.
both of you, in a way. I don't know if, yeah, you'd add to that, Paul.
Well, I guess the positions have also been different, haven't they? Because actually, one of the reasons that we did kind of choose this particular hand-drawn aesthetic was, from some testing with Stride Triglav and architects there who found this approach appealing because they would be nervous of showing too early in a process plans that appear
Mm.
finished. And actually, they
Mm.
like the idea of them appearing open and kind of unfinished. I think
Yeah.
there's an argument both ways, and you know, it's worth us considering, in future whether there are two apps, and there is the hand-drawn aesthetic, and also a part of the toolkit that does enable architects sort of later on in the process to show photorealistic 3D models in place also. I mean, I think what's really key for us is that it's situated, it's in place. And you were sort of talking a bit about kind of what's the value of augmented reality. Well, that's the particular value for me, is we're seeing kind of digital layers augmented onto the real world, and
Mm.
that enables us in the context to understand the impact these changes might have, or in the context, to be dropped into and immersed in historical events, or to see those historical buildings visualized, in the place that they were, or the events, to make the events experienceable in the place where they happen. So that's what's really particular for me about augmented reality, rather than, say, VR as a solution.
And again, your project's gone through iterations. So just like Amy's, you started, you've listened, you've evolved, you've listened, you evolved, and you can see where you'd like it to go. So, Paul, what was your first budget? So what did you have for V1?
Wow, actually, I'd have to look back to see that. I mean, in a way, V1 was part of the art project that I described. That was initially funded by a Perform Europe fund, so it's Creative Europe that funded that. And Future Places Toolkit is very like the end of that performance project, which, as I said, was a kind of science fiction guided tour. And having shown people animated futures layered over their place, they then had an opportunity to imagine their own science fiction and see that kind of drawn live, and also to hear the sort of future location sounds, because we also have a kind of immersive sound system that we carry with us. But yeah, that project, I think, that was maybe it was about 80, I don't know, £80,000 or £100,000. Probably £80,000 because it was in euros. But yeah, that was funding a whole tour, and the software development part of that was quite minor. Can't remember, Jack. I can't remember how much the first the R&D funding was from Visual
Yeah, I
Effects.
think the kind of newer version that we use now, it was kickstarted really by the My World
Yeah,
funding a couple of years ago, wasn't it? Which maybe was floating around the 50K kind of point.
I think just I'm only I know it's not exact, Jack. It's just getting a little bit of a finger in the air
Yeah.
for, as you said, you can start at the 10, the fives, the tens. There's a sliding scale of conversation here depending on what we want for that V1 and letting it evolve as we get the user testing and get customers. You know, Paul, you've got people who want to pay for this now. So we can move. We want to, like any good startup, you want to get it get it in front of somebody so they can start critiquing and start seeing the value. So they'll then start wanting to have it.
Mhm.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And that it's really good to be at that point where you know, people are, you know, uh, yeah, people are now willing to pay for what we're offering and can see the value of it. And you know, we have now, well, I think it's around sort of £50,000 worth of kind of sales, which
It's great.
is a really
There's
good
there's
start.
always a key thing on any project is don't get so obsessed with perfect that it doesn't get out there. I think both projects have got, you both know what perfect could look like. Amy, as you rightly said, unless, we also have budgets, but we also have users, and having that balance is how it moves forward. Robin, can I bring you in as we look to wrap up and get your thoughts as well?
Yeah, happy to come in. I could keep listening to this conversation as well because it's brilliant, and I love the fact that there's this like kind of link that Paul in his academic role is not directly sending, but the students are going over, sort of to Amy and kind of learning from that. There's probably a whole piece about how you manage that, like how do you put that back out into the world for other people to sort of pick up. I think
If
that.
I was going to plan an experience like this, I would want to go and play with as much as I could, because I think what we've all said is you don't really know what you really want unless you go and experience it. And I, Jack, that's why we've got you involved in Bath Digital Festival for the last couple of years, is for people to come and experience the technology. Because trying to explain the concepts, this is why your website shows rather than tells. If you start going on about what you do, that's not what this is for. You just make it look easy behind the scenes.
It's also knowing what you don't like. So we did a lot of the Florence church that Jack showed. I mean, before we even sent out the invite to tenders, we went up to the National Gallery and we did that. You know, we played around with it and we visited a lot of different sites and it kind of helps to also know kind of what won't work at your site or like what you don't want or kind of, and a lot of that was just observing other people using it as well. So it kind of, yeah, it really helps to kind of just go around and play with what other people are doing.
And then, as you both have done, got people to play. Once you've got your V1, get people to come and play and get people to give you feedback. This is a very circular development process.
And yeah, I'd like to touch on that kind of quite quickly because some of these projects can seem very daunting, particularly if you're looking at the stage where you're at now. And it can be difficult to get funding for a large amount of work to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that tends to be easier is finding smaller pots of money to get things going, like 5K or so, 10K, can be easier to find rather than if you come into the university, if you kind of come to me and are asking for 50, 60K without any kind of proof that there is a demand, that there is a need. However, if we do the smaller projects and iterate and then find, that there is ground, that there's, stuff that you've learned from it, it tends then to kind of get momentum and sort of carry on. And then, like things like Future Place Toolkit, I think the whole sort of support mechanisms kind of kick into place. And I
Well, as
think
Paul said, V1 didn't have the tech. V1 doesn't even have to have this. You can do a baby version of this without the technology, just to start having the conversations. Amy, you weren't showing them tech, you were talking about it. and the usability and the requirements and the demographics of who you want to be speaking to in your project and their relationship with that. So yeah, don't think it's tech or nothing.
Yeah,
And all that information, yeah, go on.
Yeah, it's definitely worth exploring what can you prototype and play test without, all of the tech in place that you imagine. And in a way, the place to start anyway is, I mean, Jack was saying this earlier, really, the place to start anyway when you're scoping something out is not really with the tech solution. It's, well, what do you want it to do? What's its purpose? What do you want to achieve?
And the more testing we do with that, the more information we have, the better. When we go to Jack and give him all that information, he'll be like, right, I now know what we're doing. It'll make the project a lot better from day one.
I've got a question, and maybe it's a bit towards Jack, but anybody else, anybody could answer it if they're doing some future gazing. But I guess it kind of comes back to something discussed earlier on, but future wise, like, are there, and let's move, maybe you can incorporate AI into it, but technologies that's like we should start kind of like paying attention to, like Jack, that you're the same way you were getting excited about AR, VR 10, 15 years ago. Is there stuff that we might want to kind of be thinking about for future projects that just to kind of like pay attention to?
Oh, that's a tricky one.
Not going to make it easy.
Yeah, I guess obviously AI is going to be the big one. Aside from that, I don't think any of the conversations around smart glasses or whatnot, I don't think they're realistic at the moment, at least not for another 2 or 3 years. Even when they are viable, I can't really see a sizable number of people wearing them out in the street. Not yet, anyway. They need to get over some serious kind of usability hurdles first. So yeah, I think really just AI. I think we need to be wary of the more invasive sort of aspects of that, and have our defenses up a little bit, especially when it comes to, for the historical kind of content accuracy. There's a lot of blind faith at the moment, it seems, in sort of saying, "Oh, ChatGPT told me it's like this," and half the time it's just making stuff up. So we need to be careful with stuff like that.
It's also worth bearing in mind, particularly within the heritage and cultural sector, that there are a lot of funders that now have clauses in around AI, because of environmental sustainability. So certainly the National Lottery Heritage Fund has a clause around it in terms of, when and why you use it, because of the environmental impacts it has. And I think, that is going to become a bigger factor in funders' decisions going forward.
Yeah, good feedback.
I mean, we'll see what happens legally also, but there's certainly currently legal and IP risks when it comes to using AI in projects, I would say, unless you're using it for prototyping, rather than for the end product. I mean, I think in terms of technologies, I think it certainly, those convergences between immersive and AI are going to be very significant. And as Jack said, they are also making things more accessible, and they are potentially kind of bringing costs down of developing immersive environments. Certainly, it's making things more that are technically sophisticated more possible for some of our immersive art students who don't necessarily have computing backgrounds. So that's really interesting. I think that the AR glasses, yeah, we might not be at that point yet. I mean, as others have said, one of the reasons I like AR is because of its accessibility, and actually we're currently displaying it, as you could see, on mobile phones, mobile devices, on selfie sticks, and you don't actually need to interact with the screen. The interaction is simply looking around. That's that which doesn't really involve significant sort of tech literacy, which I think is great. And I guess AR glasses in the end, do have that kind of potential. It's interesting, I suppose, seeing like the Samsung Galaxy XR headsets starting to be sold, and yeah, sort of Google and Android getting involved in that market. So I suspect, yeah, my predictions, AI XR convergence
Well,
is
we'll do this
really
again in a couple of years'
interesting.
time and see what's happened, won't we?
And I think we are going to see AR glasses in one form or another, but it's interesting that, as Jack says, the way they're currently being marketed, at least the sort of wearable uh, glasses, they're not really AR glasses. It's simply a layer of information rather than full sort of visual augmented reality that those glasses are enabling, which is not yet useful to us, I don't think.
Yeah, I
We've
mean,
done two. Go on, Jack.
I was just going to say one huge advantage we have is that we can always adapt and update what we make now in the future. So, in the same way, there are 3D games from the 90s that are still hugely popular. And you get these communities of modders online that just make new texture packs or whatever. They upgrade these old games, 30-year-old games, and they still work brilliantly. You just get a new computer, you get a new monitor, it just works and looks better than it did when it was made. So the same approach works for our 3D models and our experiences. When the new smartphones come out, when we switch to AR glasses or whatever in the future, holograms or whatever, it should be a pretty easy, or at least straightforward process for us to kind of adapt what we've already made to those new platforms, whether it's Future Places Toolkit or the AR stuff at Beckford's Tower. It's already made, it can be improved, it can run on newer devices. So that's a huge advantage we have, and that's not a luxury that exists in the film and TV world, for example. They set a resolution, they make the whole film to 1080p, and in 10 years' time it looks a bit rubbish and they have to remake the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting, some of the, we can talk about the kind of flashy developments, can't we? Like new hardware, new devices coming on stream, like AR glasses. Actually, the other thing that's super exciting at the moment, and I think you're probably using it for the Beckford Tower, is just the take up of WebXR and web GPUs. So
Mm.
actually, AR experiences and VR experiences are accessible, via web platforms, and therefore much more accessible to more people, and don't require particular high spec devices that people can't afford.
Well, thank you very much to our Hive Mind sharing your experiences and approaches to this technology. I think we've had some lovely comments in the chat. I think my key mission for today was just people feeling more comfortable in where to start and understanding what works. And it feels like a lot of the processes are very similar to making a video, building a website, and starting with why, how you make Jack's life easier when you go to talk to him about your project going forward. Thank you all very much for coming. I'm going to pop this on YouTube in the next couple of days, and this is the last session of this series, but we hope to be back in the new year. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.